Hello and welcome to this month's drawing of Gnosis. So this month should be a bit of an interesting topic and discussion, as this is the first monthly drawing that I used AI in. And so we'll be discussing about how I think AI should probably be used and kind of what I did with AI in this drawing. So we'll see that come up maybe pretty quickly. I don't know how much when speeding up these videos it will pop up in it beforehand, because I do the recording and the drawing separately. But that's just a heads up on that, and so what we'll be discussing this week. But before we get into that, my name is Lacking a Name. I am the creator, author, and artist for Gnosis. Gnosis updates Monday, Wednesdays, Friday, so if you're interested in the drawing that you've seen here and would enjoy a good 3 update week-long comic, come by and check it out. We have gradually been growing, and it's always good to have new people there. We got a nice small fun community going on. So go on, have fun, come have some fun and be part of it. So, going into the topic of AI and kind of my general thoughts of it, I did delay this video by a week because I wanted to double check some information on it. And lots of people have thoughts on AI and kind of what it should be used for and what it shouldn't be, or even if it should exist. So to kind of lay out my general thoughts on it is, I think AI could be very good at automating the tedious process of different things that we do. So that's just kind of a general statement. I'm going to focus in on how AI can be used for art for a good while now. So what I would like AI to be used for in drawing, a lot of people talk about, well, it's going to replace artists and stuff, because why hire an artist when you could just put in a prompt and get something from AI? And it's like, well, the answer of why you should hire an artist is so you have someone that you can communicate with and get consistent work out of. I remember a while ago seeing a demonstration of someone using AI where, while they did the color blocking of a drawing, the AI in real time was taking that color blocking and turning it into a finished anime drawing. For those who don't know, color blocking is the technique where basically you just take your colors and put them down on a canvas, and you're just making like big not even really sketches, but like brush strokes of where color should be on different stuff. And this kind of can help you get kind of just the layout and feel for the overall color composition of your drawing. So that's what color blocking is. Now, for the AI to take that and turn it into a finished drawing, I'm not gonna lie, that's impressive. But one thing that stood out to me that was interesting is how the AI kept insisting on this kind of anime Yakuza gangster-looking dude having neck tattoos were, even though there didn't seem to be anything blocking for that. And so that's something interesting that kept popping up in there. The other problem I had with it is, okay, you've gotten this one drawing. Now, draw the same character again from a different angle, doing a different action, different setting, what have you. And you're going to run into a consistency problem where AI really seems to keep things consistent in between one drawing to the next. And so, like, would those neck tattoos still be there? Will they change? After all, they weren't blocked and there wasn't anything to basically assigning that value to them. It's just something that the AI threw in there. So that to me seems to be one of the biggest problems, is that AI has, I guess you could say, potential, but the capacity to do a impressive single drawing, but it can't consistently follow that up. All right. So kind of what I used with AI in this drawing is I did the sketch work of a kitsui with the big sword here. And kind of a rough hashing for the environment, I think. Or maybe it was just a sword. It was a hot minute. I forgot what I originally did for this. But I took that, put it into AI and said, I want you to finish this drawing in a metal style and give me 4 different variations on the idea. So along with the sketching, I had some rough idea for kind of how the armor should look and such. It was something that I was really struggling with, which I just didn't know what she should be wearing. And she should be wearing something, alright? Otherwise, my mom's going to have a word or two to say about me. Maybe with a frying pan or a gun, if she wasn't wearing anything. So, I took that, put in AI, like I said, give me 4 different variations of this in a metal setting, and that gave me the 4 different kind of references to use. Now in art, another thing before people start a project will do is basically create what they call a reference board. Well, they'll look up references of what they're drawing or kind of inspirations and put them on a big board to help remind them of different aspects that they like to go into a finished drawing. AI, I think, is pretty decent at that, because basically what I'm asking is, hey, go and create a reference board or various reference boards that I can look at, along with and so that's just something that's kind of done here. Kind of along with that, I think I asked it to make it a professional illustration. So this basically means, like, theoretically have body portions are more appropriately set and such. And so I think, like, you'll see some stuff in here where I'll measure, like, kind of the waistline length and the leg lengths and such, and go and make adjustments to my own drawing so that those were more properly proportioned. This is something I think AI could be good at too, and that is kind of the feedback thing, where it used to be if you wanted feedback on a drawing, you had to, of course, publish it or give it to someone to get feedback on it. If you wanted good feedback, you would have to go and give it to a good artist that can give you feedback and directions on kind of, well, this doesn't look quite right, it should look more like this. Now, the thing about that is, you might saying, well, you'd rightfully be saying is, well, that's someone who knows what they're doing. And it's true, it is someone who knows what they're doing, but the feedback they're giving you is more, I guess you could say, generalized into the general field of what you may be wanting to accomplish. So, like, for example, if you have a character who's, say, like, let's just go for Kitsu here. Let's say she was missing one of her fingers, so she only had 4 fingers. All right. The general information would be, she has 4 fingers, she should have 5 fingers. All right. So regardless if you gave that to AI or a person, that should flag up of, you don't got enough fingers going here. At which case, you should disregard it, because stylistically, she's missing a finger, so you only have the 4 fingers in there. And what, I guess at best, but what would be good when talking with an actual person that you get feedback on, it's like, well, this finger was cut off, and maybe that person would know kind of what does a severed fingered hand look like, or that'd be something that you would look up references, images of missing digits and such, to give an idea of how the hand shape might change and adjust with that missing there. So that's kind of what I was using AI for, is to create art boards and get general feedback on the rough sketch of proportions and things. Now, a couple of interesting things that I noted with the AI in this drawing, and you can kind of see the art board AI referencing going on here, where a lot of the drawings, I think even all 4 of the AI stuff, had a yin-yang symbol up on the hilt of the blade. Now, spoiler for the final drawing, a yin-yang symbol doesn't appear there. One was never intended. It's just interesting that in all the variations that insisted there needed to be something like that there. What's also interesting is all of them insisted that there should be like runes or something written on the flat of the blade. And spoiler for the final thing, this was actually one of the last steps I did. It was something I was trying to be very adamant about. I don't want writing on this blade. Probably because I was kicking them against the AI. I'm not entirely sure why. But ultimately, I decided, okay, yeah, it needs it. So I do put kind of writing on the blade for the final drawing. But it's just interesting in those respects of those were details I never specified in the prompt or the sketch that AI insisted needed to be there. And it was kind of right on one of them. It's also still interesting that despite the sketch only having 2 arms, you'll see, I think I even kind of highlighted that it gives a Kitsui 3 arms. So AI still being AI there. So, some stuff still needs to be checked, and you have to apply critical thought to there with stuff. So that was just, in general, some interesting aspects looking at it. And there were some things in there that I ended up really liking. It's probably popped up now at this point in the video, but the belt that the Kitsui is wearing, I think it was in the first AI generated image, so the top left one, that her belt had these little curved spikes coming out of the bottom of it for a bit. I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. I want to run with that and do it all across the whole belt and put them on the top too. And so that's something that I did, where I just took kind of a general idea that the AI had and then expanded upon it. I say AI had, but that the AI compiled. Some other things that were interesting at that is, I think that of the 4 different images, the first one I made, so that top left one again, was the one that was closest to what I wanted for the final drawing. And I suppose that says something about the AI and just kind of that generalization of information, is that it seems to be very good with that first initial creation as to kind of what is expected and wanted. And then as you ask it to branch out and deviate, it does move further away from what would just be initially wanted. Because keep in mind, all 4 of those images came from the same sketch. So I suppose that one could talk about that, rightfully suggests that, well, what the AI is doing is making just a very generic picture. All right, I asked it to take this sketch and turn it into a metal drawing. So that first one it did was the most generic idea of that sketch in a metal drawing. And then everything else off of that deviated further and further from that, was by that make 3 more that are different from it. And I do think that is a very good line of argument that basically using AI, it just creates the most generic image of that. Now, that being said, too much creativity isn't always the best thing, because you want people to be able to relate to a picture and understand what they are seeing. This isn't I'm not doing the impressionistic art, all right? And so if it gets too far out there, it becomes too alien to most audiences. So this is kind of where you get into that funky line of you want it generic enough that most people will be able to understand what they're looking at, but creative enough that it doesn't become forgettable. So that's just an interesting aspect of, when using AI for these types of reference generations and such, to keep in mind there, or at least that I'm finding. So kind of moving on a bit as to the problems I see with how AI is being developed. So this was mainly an experiment, not so much to just work AI into my workflow, but much like with last month's drawing, where I did a drawing that someone else, I did a drawing but I used someone else's drawing as a reference image on how to improve my own art. This was an experiment in using AI into how to improve my own art through creating references and such, or inspiration pieces. And I mean, like I said, it gave a Kitsui 3 arms, so I think there's room for improvement. But it's just a first step in that experimentation. So moving on to how AI can be used in development. If you're trying to use it for the concept stage, like I know there's a bunch of drama kind of with Larian Studios and them using AI in the early concept stages for their next Divinity game. I don't actually think that that's too bad of an idea. just because even if you don't use the reference image itself as a basis for your drawing, it can create inspiration for stuff. Like, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but it's like using Halo's Reach's Forge world, where yeah, you could just go to a blank part of the map and build whatever you wanted there. But I found the most use out of it of taking just a part of the Forge world that they had, looking at it and drawing inspiration from it. Kind of, all right, here's something that's already exists. What can I tweak it and turn it into, and make for a game mode and such out of it. So some people, I say some people, and sometimes for me, the blank canvas is nice. I have an idea. It's great not to have to work around anything, and I could just go from that. Other times, I like kind of the restriction of here's something that's already exists. Now build around it and enjoy, and see what you can come up with. And I enjoy kind of that challenge and the architecture that would emerge from including the natural environment in it. So AI, I think, can fall into kind of that category of, hey, give me something that I have to work in with the restrictions of, and let's see what I can come up with. So that's a potential use in there because it basically just gives you, here's your restrictions now, what can you come up in this setting. So I think that is a potential use for it, is generating random restrictions for you to experiment and grow with. So there's that aspect to it. I think the other part with problem of how AI is being developed and used is, like I said earlier, it's really being used with the idea of trying to replace artists, where you could just type in a prompt and get what you want. I don't think that's really useful. I think it would be much more useful if they tried to turn it into a usable tool, right? Because a usable tool will not replace a skilled artist. It's been a long saying that the tool doesn't make the artist makes the tool. All right, and that's basically to say that just because you get a fancy digital tablet and everything doesn't mean that you'll become a great artist. All right, but likewise, we kind of overlooked where a great artist, if you give him a poor tool or a advanced tool, he's still going to turn out something great. But a good tool will mean that a good artist will have to spend less time fighting against it. So kind of an example of this is when I started doing comics, long before I published anything with the original Gratz trilogy and that very first early stuff. I did that with a pencil and Corella twistable crayons. Well, I said crayons, but I'm colored pencils. And so I would do the drawing in pencil and then spend time coloring it. And that would take a good long time to do. When I went to go start publishing stuff online, I wanted to raise the quality of the images, because you can go and take a look back at that stuff and see that it's sometimes very hard to see that just the scanning and when you scan it and it goes into the computer, the colors don't come through all the time, the line doesn't come through, and there's a lot of kind of limitations on it. So I did some experimenting about how to try and improve that scanning process before I decided I'm just going to need to get a tablet and learn to draw digitally. And so that's what I did. The great part about this is, we can see a lot of the work that I do now, aside from me being able to easily record the work that I'm doing. Coloring is much, much faster. I can use just the paint bucket to fill in whole areas of the character and the environment and such. The vibrancy and range of colors I can get is much greater and more, I guess you could say, filling and intense. You don't get the little kind of scratchy lines as you're trying to color stuff in with a colored pencil. The line work is also easier to see, just by that nature too of it all being digital and not having to try and darken lines with a pencil or whatnot, or go back over and trace stuff with a pen. So those are all benefits of me using a better tool than pencil and colored pencils. All right. So that's what I mean by a better tool. And I think AI can be a better tool. So, like with my production, usually I'll have a day where I do the sketches and line work, and then the next day is all about the coloring and the environment. All right. But if I could have the AI go in and do all the line work for me, and I'm accepting that, yeah, I'd go back through and have to touch stuff up and make adjustments to how I would like things, but just do the bulk of the line work for me, and then do all the flats of the characters for me. That would basically eliminate almost a whole day's worth of work for what I have to do. Which means that theoretically, if I could then get my production time down from 2 days for a page to 1 day for a page, I could turn Gnosis into a 5 page a week update thing rather than the 3 that it currently is. Which means I could tell the story much faster. It also means that I wouldn't have to worry about how long certain scenes drag out over time. So kind of like I'm referencing what I talked about with how long, just recently, with how long should a fight scene last, asking the readers about this, is that I had a fight scene that went for 3 pages. That was 1 whole week's worth of updates. All right. But if I could do 5 pages in a week, that fight scene turns from 3 pages to 5 pages. All right. That's if I'm doing 5. Maybe I would do 6 if I kept the same production schedule. So this effectively that would mean is 1 week's worth of update would essentially just be doubled, which means I could dedicate a week to a fight scene that when you're going through and reading it in real time won't feel like it drags out forever because it's only taking 1 week to tell that whole sequence of fights. Or of a fight, which means that I can either make fights feel like they go longer because there's more pages dedicated to them, or I could add more detail into a fight because it's not going to suck up as much time. Like an example I had about this when I was discussing this with my mom is people may have noticed how Zenji will hold his hand axe up by the head of it, right? This isn't just to be stylistically stupid. It has a real purpose for it. And the example of that kind of being is if he's holding his axe up by its head, it's almost to be wielded more kind of like a tofon or tofon, I think they're called, kind of the ninja stick things with a little handle that come out of the side. Maybe it's called a tofu. I'm not sure. Anyhow, so in a fight, say someone swings low, he drops his hand down and blocks a blow with the handle, and then they swing again at his head, and he lifts it up, loosens his grip a bit so the axe pops up, and he catches it with the head of his axe. All right, that's 2 to 3 different panels right there, which for that little action, which would amount to almost half a page worth of a 3-page update. So we're already at 1/6 of a weekly update just spent on that little action. All right. Whereas if my production time was down to 1 day, that so 6 pages a week, that would become 1/12 of the weekly update. So it is less cumbersome on the timeline and the pacing of the story for just that little action. Because, yeah, it's not something that becomes real apparent when you're reading it, but just the time dilation problem. So, like with the chapter A Mage for Hire, which ended up being a very long chapter, it ran for a few months, and I forgot how many pages it was or how long it ran. But I know it ran for a few months. You want to know how much time passed in that chapter? Like 2.5 days. All right, it took months to tell 2.5 days worth of story. So there's the wild time dilation on stuff that I've been telling this story now for coming up here, I think on 3 years or so, unless I'm going crazy and it's actually 4 years. But realistically, the characters have probably only been on the road for a few months. All right, so just wild the time stuff there. Now I got nothing on the whiteboard who had years dedicated to one single day in their comic. But yeah, So, circling back how this all works with AI is, once again, if I could speed up the workflow using AI, then I could tell the story much faster and put more detail into it. And that's the problem that I have with how AI is being developed, is they're not really turning it into a practical tool for use. They're trying to turn it into a replacement tool. And you're just not going to replace that. I mean, everyone would say, well, what if I just use AI to tell a story as good as Gnosis? It's like, first off, I would hope AI could tell a story better than Gnosis. I'm not that vain to think, no, this is the greatest thing ever, and AI would never be able to tell it. But second, AI would only be able to tell a Gnosis story because I wrote the Gnosis story. And that's the thing with AI, is it can only compile and draw from what already exists. If it doesn't exist, AI can't make it. And so that's kind of I'd say the big Achilles heel to AI's existence in general, is that pattern of behavior there. And the problem with how it's being developed is no one is interested in trying to make it a viable tool. And so that's kind of what I see have been a lot of problems with how AI is being developed and behaves. So I've talked a bit about how I would like AI to fix my seat a bit, to be used and developed, and no one just really seems interested in doing that. And so kind of continuing along with that line is, well, what happens if AI is made to be that? So, basically it can become a tool that will automate a lot of kind of the busy work of art. And I'd say that the next step is, then if it does that, it doesn't make you a great artist with less effort. It just means the standard of quality has been raised. So, yeah, so let me kind of get into what that means here. So, I've mentioned back in my 3 most influential stories of good versus evil on Berserk. And Miria was well known, particularly after the Golden Age arc, of having lots of detail in his drawing, and especially like on the armor, the environment, and just the high quality of artwork he put out. That takes a lot of time to do, which is why with my own drawings you don't see so much engravings and decoration on armor and such. It's just I don't have the time to be able to do that. But if AI could be used where basically you drew the character once and did like a couple different reference images of it and how the armor and the engraving should look and such, and then when you went and did that drawing, the AI would recognize that character and then map the proper engravings and such onto the armor for you, that would mean that you could get that, theoretically, you could get that level of detail far quicker and easier using the AI. Now, this does not mean that you are now as great of an artist as Miria was. This just means that Miria's level of quality has become the new standard level of quality. So, kind of that, once again, that idea of when the tools make stuff simple, it doesn't make you a great artist. It just makes that the standard of what you now need to do. And so that is something that I think would be very, very good and helpful for AI to, once again, how it should be developed and how it should be used, is the ability to make stuff that take stuff that would be complex and very difficult to do, and simplify it. So that way you can do more complex and difficult stuff to do in your stories and things. And then kind of grow off of that. Like, think about people, it's been memed on about with anime and such, that kind of the talking head where the only thing that's animated is the mouth moving. But that's because the head is so detailed. Well, now if it's easy to move that head around and turn it and such, because the AI will fill in, will do all the in-betweens for that detailed head, Guess what that means? Head's going to be moving a whole lot more. Your action scenes are going to have a whole lot more movement and not going to just be the blur with a couple of steel frames through and there, or turn into laser beam shootouts. You're going to have that detail of punches and kicks being thrown and blocks and parries and dodges and all that stuff. So, because that's now a doable quality, so your quality is going to have to be risen to that level. And so I think that's kind of another aspect of how AI is not being viewed. It's being viewed too much as a shortcut, all right, without questions being asked of, well, what does that shortcut mean? It doesn't mean that you now do less. The answer is it means you now do more. And this is kind of panning out with some stuff of how AI has been deployed into the real world. And this is when I said I wanted to double check some stuff. This is stuff that I wanted to double check, where companies that have brought AI into their workflow, there's a couple of major problems with them, such as they're finding that AI will just make stuff up quite regularly, and it doesn't do as good of a job as what a person really would do. I think I saw one number quantified as a person would generate like $14,000 in revenue for a company. AI generated $1,000 revenue for a company. I might be wrong on that because I don't remember the citations and I have a problem with zeros. But essentially, it's just that the AI was just vastly inferior to what a person can do. There's also the problem of growing pains, where your experienced employees are actually 20% slower using AI than if they didn't have AI. And that's simply just because they're having to try and spend time learning how to use the AI that the company is demanding that they use, rather than actually making work. I will point out I do think this is a growing pain, and that I would be interested in seeing how does a young, inexperienced employee, how does AI augment their workflow? Are they the same? Are they slower? Are they faster? That's just a detail I wasn't able to find. So I'd be interested to see kind of how that would work, but I suspect that particular detail is just kind of a growing pain there. But it might also come down to that AI is just really not there yet, and that it's just inherently going to be slower and make more mistakes than what a person actually would. So, everyone kind of chill out. Don't go replacing employees yet. You still need them over the AI. But one thing I do think demonstrates this perfectly, that I do agree with, seems to be that in the nursing sector, that when AI was used to fill out basically patient reports and information and such after visiting them, it's not that the nurses had more time, it's that they fired more nurses, and those that remained had 10 times the workload. So rather than having more downtime, they had less downtime. And their quality of work for the nurses actually became more stressful and less beneficial, because they just didn't have that natural work downtime of having to sit there and type stuff off, where you just could kind of chill and go into autopilot mode. Instead, you then had to keep the afterburners on 24/7 all the time. So that's kind of, like I said, the problem. There's some problems of how it looks like AI is being deployed and developed, and just the mentality of it, where it's, once again, where it's being sold as, oh, it's a shortcut, so you have to do less. It's like, no, it's a shortcut that makes stuff easier, which means you now have to do more with it. And so that's kind of just a reflection of that. Now, kind of, I guess, wrapping up my thoughts on this. Do I think AI is terrible and will replace artists? No, I don't think it will. I think what it does is replaces a lot of the busy work of art. So, like I mentioned, Berserk and with that, but just with a lot of mangas in general, it's not all drawn and done by one person. You'll usually have a team of people working on it. All right, it might only be like 5 to 8 people doing it, but it's still a team effort to make it all happen and reach those publication dates and such. And so that's how they're able to do 15 pages a week. I don't have a team, so I'm only able to do 3 pages a week. But if I could use AI to simulate a team, and go up to, like I said, 6 pages a week. I don't know how far you could push AI to go if it's and such, but basically that would then mean that all of a sudden the independent artist now has access to resources that formerly took whole teams of people to do. And this is some stuff that I've been talking about with the video AI and things like that of, hey, it used to take whole teams and companies of people to do this. Now AI could do it all on its own with one person in their garage. I do think there is a degree of truth to that. I think the tools need to be more refined to make that happen before it becomes a real viable thing. Like I said, you have the consistency issue going on there in between shot to shot and long-term composition of stuff. But I do think that basically AI providing the leverage to take the more monotonous and mundane aspects of art and offload that onto it instead of offloading it onto another person is basically something that's already happening in the art industry that we're just kind of ignoring. Now, if you're wondering, well, what about the person who that's being the line cleanup guy that's being loaded, that was being offloaded onto, that's now going to AI, what about his job and such? And I say, you're right to be concerned with that. And the only option I could think of is, rather than him having to be a cleanup artist, he can go and make his own thing. But that might not be what he wants to do. So that is a problem in that respect. But that's just, I guess, kind of that thought there of potentially addressing it. But at the same time, you also just have to accept that, there are some jobs that will disappear. Like the car ended the career of the horse and buggy driver, or it turned them into a much more niche market for special occasions and events and such. Whereas before they were just kind of like they could be just a general transportation service. And so I'm not trying to downplay that or overlook that won't happen and couldn't exist. It could. And, it's just kind of those things of having to accept it. But I might be biased because I'm not the cleanup artist guy. I'm the guy who wants to be the lead creator. And so that means if I could take Gnosis and turn it from a 3-page update to a 6-page update, yeah, I would make that trade. I'm not arrogant enough to pretend that I wouldn't do that. But yeah, so I think there is a lot of benefits that AI could offer in the future. But the problem is, I don't think anyone's developing it at this time to meet those benefits. I think they're developing it for the big flashy showpiece rather than an actual usable tool. And so I think that's kind of been my biggest issue with it, is that it's not turning into a usable tool. My greatest fear is that people ultimately go, this isn't doing quite what we wanted to do, right? It's not replacing artists, so we're just going to scrap the whole thing. When I think it's like, no, make it that usable tool. I'm the artist. I want a usable tool so I can get stuff done and do more with it. And so basically it's just kind of because it's not that prospect being lost. That's my real greatest fear of AI, is what it could be being abandoned because of what it can't be. So yeah. So I'm sure you have some thoughts of your own to share about AI, and I would like to hear them. This is a topic a lot of people have opinions on. Some people might be sick about discussing them and such. The only reason I'm talking about it is because I used AI in this drawing, and so I just didn't want to do this drawing and have AI in there and not express why it's in there. But yeah, so I'll probably continue to experiment with AI. I already did another drawing using AI in there as well, so we'll see that here again. A bit, probably be a different topic, but yeah. So is AI here to stay in my artwork? Maybe not. I'll have to see if I could find ways for it to be useful to me. And if it's not useful, then yeah, just throw it away. All right, I'm grumpy like that. But yeah, share your thoughts, and if you're interested more in seeing what Gnosis could be, as it could be, and what it is right now, come check it out. Like I said, we update Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 7:01 every morning, and yeah, it's been a great adventure. It's been years for us, months for them. So come and see what that looks like. And I hope you have a great day and a great rest of your week and a great rest of your month. So take care.